Welcome to Riding Counsel with Rich Jaffe, where the open road meets expert advice. I'm Richard Jaffe, an attorney and biking enthusiast, and this is the podcast where we dive into the world of motorcycling, safety, culture, charitable giving, and riding right. So, whether you're a seasoned rider or just getting started, let's talk bikes, the road, and everything in between. Let's ride! All right. Hello, everyone out there in Riding Counsel land. Thanks a lot for listening again. My name is Rich Jaffe, and I'm going to be talking today about a lot of legal aspects about motorcycle riding and how they apply in court. I'm here with my very good friend and someone who's going to be hosting with me today. His name is Millian. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, hello, everybody. Millian here with you. Millian, your co-host and color commentary today here on Riding Counsel. And just want to welcome you. And listen, if you're watching this on YouTube, a couple quick things that'll take you 10 seconds before we get into this. Hit that like button for us because it's going to get this information out to everyone. Hit the subscribe button so you get updated whenever we send something. Ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. You're going to get all kind of legal know-how and when the road gets rough and just some good old biking talk up in here. So drop a comment below while you're there. Let us know where you're listening in from. And today we're going to get into it. So Richard, I understand you ride a bike. Is that true?
Yeah. You know, I used to ride a Schwinn when I was about 8 years old, and I had the
was that the pan head motor on the Schwinn? was it real souped up? Is that the kind of thing you had going on?
I loved it. I don't even know if it was a Schwinn. I don't remember. I think it was a Schwinn, but that thing was awesome. I was like the hottest. It was the hottest thing on my block, you know, because I was like one of the few kids who had a bike. But now I ride a big boy bike, a very big boy bike.
What do you ride?
I have a Harley Davidson Road Glide. It's a 2024, and it's pretty modded out. So I did a couple of things to it. First of all, I love the bike. It's a great bike to ride, especially if you're touring. It has the gigantic fairing in the front with all the updated computers and the software, which is pretty cool. And I got what it's called a dongle, so I hooked that up under my seat so I could play AirPlay right on the screen. I have some crash bars and some saddlebag guards from Advent Black with the red sliders in the back. I have Olin shocks in the back. I got Legends in the front. So this is a really smooth ride. I got a seat from Bad Boys. Shout out to Bad Boys Seats for excellent customer service. Really appreciate you. I got all kinds of mods going on, and it's really the ride of my life. I'm putting the miles on and really enjoying myself with it.
Yeah, just wanted to bring up a picture and get a good look at it. That's a sweet bike, man. You got it all tripped out too. It's like if you were in space, it'd be like a spaceship. It's pretty.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great, man. So, you know, it's a ride of a lifetime. I'm really lucky to be able to have it. You know, I'm taking care of it the best way I can. And
well, how long have you been riding officially with the big boy bikes?
Oh boy. So back in the day, I really couldn't afford a car and I had to work. I mean, that's just where I came from, right? So, you know, I couldn't get a car. So I had to it was like a scooter. It was like a Honda 250cc scooter. And you're going way back. I mean, I'm in my 50s now, so you're going way back. But that thing was pretty scary. No gears. It was just one gear and it barely reached 50 miles an hour. But ever since then, man, I've been riding. I've had all different kinds of bikes, but I enjoy Harley the most. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty solid. What do you do when you're not riding?
Well, a lot of people tell me I'm a lawyer, so I tend to believe that. I'm a personal injury lawyer, and I represent a lot of people who are in motorcycle accidents, unfortunately. So if you're hurt and it's as a result of somebody else doing something wrong, then get in touch with me. That's what we do here at Riding Counsel. We represent people who are hurt, and that has to do with all kinds of different kinds of hurt. I mean, there's pain and suffering hurt. There's also economic damages. So you're talking about loss of wages. You're talking about the money you have to spend for the hospital bills and all the medical bills. So there's all kinds of things that you have to do. But I've been, I went to law school. I graduated in 95. I've been in the business since 1988, you know, as a paralegal. And I've been trying cases ever since my very first day that I was admitted in 95. So I've tried I picked hundreds of juries. And, you know, I've got a great law firm over here, about 25 people working for me. And I like the clients, too. They're really good people and under some unfortunate circumstances. So I'm happy that they trusted me to represent them, to be their voice. And that's what I do.
Is there a reason you got into this particular area of law? Like, were you in an accident or have you experienced something like that personally? What brought that about?
You know, I originally started really focusing on medical malpractice. So Medical malpractice is sort of something I grabbed onto because I believe my mom died of medical malpractice, which is pretty horrible. So, the doctors just didn't catch the cancer. And then when they did catch it, the records show that they knew about it, but they didn't tell my mom, didn't tell me, didn't tell anybody. So the statute of limitations to sue had passed, and that was a really terrible situation. And, as far as my dad goes, man, he died of medical malpractice too. And
Oh,
there was notes in the hospital records that they completely made up about my dad and tried to really make it go a different way. Then it was just a really horrible situation where the doctors lied, and I caught them. And I don't think they really like that very much. But if it happened to me, I wonder how many times it happened to other people. So I got behind medical malpractice, and that led me into personal injury. And because I'm a motorcycle rider and I'm around motorcyclists a lot of people started to contact me about problems that they had. So I got into motorcycle law more. So that's where my practice is involved. I represent a lot of people in car accidents too, trips and slips and falls. Basically, if you're hurt and it's not your fault, I'm your guy. That's who I'm going to represent. I'm going to represent the victim, and I'm going to do everything I can to get you fully compensated.
so you've been at this quite a while then. It's like lots of cases, I assume.
Oh, yeah, thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of cases. I like to think I know everybody in the business. Everybody treats me like a professional. I try to act like a professional. I treat them like a professional. I think that really adds to the value of what you get at my firm because there is a time to fight, but there's also a time not to fight. Meaning that, if you could talk it out and save time, save money, then that's really what to do. But, once you start going to extremes, and there is a time for that to go to extremes, but it's okay. It's okay to go to extremes, but not where it's not warranted. It really has to be something to go to battle for that's warranted because I don't want to spend a client's money on something like an expert or their valuable time in court if I don't really have to, and I'm going to get to the same result. So, I'm also going to tell them the truth. I mean, I've seen so many cases. I know pretty much what's going to happen in the future before it actually happens. So, sort of a fortune teller I am, but I'm going to tell you the truth, and it might not be what you want to hear, but it's definitely what you need to know. And that's the way I like it. I don't mean to minimize anybody's injuries. I don't mean to put anybody's accident like sort of by the side. I don't want to make them feel like that. But if I feel you have no case, I'm going to tell you you have no case, and I'm going to tell you the way it is. If you do, on the other hand, have a case, I'm going to tell you, look, this is what you should do. This is my advice to you. I know a lot of the questions before they're asked because so many people have the same questions, and I'm happy to answer them. So you can always give me a call. You can send me an email. You can send me a text anytime, 24/7.
Who's more difficult to deal with, the doctors and the medical side of it, or maybe the insurance people? Who gives you the most trouble?
Oh, yeah, that depends upon the day, man. It depends on which way the wind's blowing because,
Yeah.
shit, sometimes the I don't select doctors for my clients. So they go to doctors sometimes on their own. Sometimes they ask me for suggestions, but a lot of times I don't know how they find the doctors. And doctors are busy people; they don't testify. I get that, but their job is to help the client or their patient. And I'm sure most of them try, but when it comes to getting medical records, well, some offices are a lot better than others, and it really helps your case if I could get your records easier, if I could communicate with your doctor easier, and sometimes that's just not possible. So it can be pretty tough. Now, on the other hand, insurance companies they have adjusters, and some of them are reachable, some of them are not. You really it's hit and miss, but the insurance companies that are really bad, like American Transit, you'll never talk to anybody over there on the other side. You just won't because they're just impossible to get in touch with, and there's no oversight. It's really horrible. But on the other hand, there are good carriers. Chubb happens to be a great insurance company because they actually do what they're supposed to do, and that's why their cases settle for fair, reasonable amounts, not these gigantic verdicts that then have to be appealed and reduced. But they talk to you. So there's good and bad insurance companies, good and bad doctors. So it really depends upon the day.
What would you say is your like craziest case or most extreme case, as much as you can share, of course? Like, what was one of the goofiest or weirdest or strangest things you've seen in your practice in one of your cases?
Let me tell you about a case that I had. I'm going to tell you about a situation. Okay, let me tell you about a situation I had because I used to volunteer as a paramedic, and I won't share this person's name or where they live, so I'm really going to protect their identity. But so we pulled up, and I was the paramedic in the ambulance. We pulled up to the patient. Patient got into the ambulance and said, "I have really bad stomach cramps," and you know. Okay, stomach cramps are kind of benign, and we can't really figure out what the heck it is. We're examining, and patient seems to be fine. And then we said, we'll take you to the hospital anyway. So a couple minutes go by, and the patient then has these horrible pains again, grabbing her stomach, saying, "Oh my God, I can't take this. You got to take me to the hospital. This is terrible." We get to the hospital, and they get her in the trauma room because nobody knows what's going on. They think maybe it's internal bleeding, and they take an X-ray, and to find out what's going on. And in the X-ray, you see the skeleton of something that resembles a rodent in her intestines. So we don't know how that got there. We don't know what it was doing there, but we know it was doing something causing her the problems. So
Hmm.
that's probably one of the craziest things that I've seen related to one of my cases. And boy, I don't know. If it doesn't get crazier than that, I'm really okay with that. But if you have a crazier story than that one, let me
Uh,
know because it's got to be pretty crazy.
I don't think rodents are supposed to be there. I mean,
No,
I'm not a doctor, but I don't recall that being
yeah,
there naturally.
yeah, rather
Yeah.
strange. But look, to each his own. No judgment. I'm glad we got the patient some help.
Oh boy.
Uh, but that was probably one of the craziest things I've seen in my day doing what I do, not only as a lawyer, but as a volunteer paramedic. And, yeah, top that one. Go ahead, put it in the comments. Top it.
Yeah, please drop a comment if you can, because I would love. We're going to read that on the next episode here if you get that
Yeah,
out to us. So,
yeah, rather crazy.
as you're driving on the road, a lot of times, speaking of the legal end of things, clearly a lot more regular cars and trucks than you see motorcycles in a lot of cases,
Sure.
and so people that don't ride may not be familiar with certain motorcycle laws. For instance, we talked, you and I, off air in the past about like helmets and things.
Right.
So some states let you have helmets, some states don't. And, I may drive and see somebody without a helmet going, wow, that dude's crazy. I would be, I'd be wearing a suit of armor or whatever that case may be.
Yeah.
What is and even if it goes to things like jackets or gloves, boots, any of that kind of stuff, clearly you always want to be safe. But in the event you are in an accident, how effective, let's be real, how effective are the helmets, jackets, boots, glove, the rash guards, things like that to keep you from getting all torn up and whatnot? In your experience with what you've seen as EMT and or attorney, what use are these? Are they everything they're hyped up to be? Are they just false sense of security? What are we talking about here?
All right. So let's make a couple of things clear. Just because you're wearing a helmet doesn't mean you're not going to get hurt. Just because you're wearing protective gear doesn't mean you're not going to get hurt. And you really have to be picky about the gear that you choose if you choose to wear some. So here's what I'm talking about. If you're wearing the best helmet possible, the most protective helmet possible, and you fall and you hit your leg or your knee, yeah, wearing a helmet's not really going to matter much. But on the other hand, if we take the legal aspects in mind, people might make a judgment to say, this guy's not wearing a helmet, so he really doesn't care, and he's making poor decisions about himself. Maybe he's making poor decisions when he's riding. Maybe he's making poor decisions about the maintenance of the motorcycle. So it's always good as far as presenting a client in a court of law that you are wearing all your protective gear. Okay, so that's the legal aspect of it because you don't want anybody to make the mistake of saying, okay, well, if he's not taking care of himself, then he must be a careless driver. He must be careless in maintaining his motorcycle, and that'll affect your recovery. But at the same token, you want to make sure that the protective gear that you're wearing is the right protective gear. Now, helmets are a tricky thing because there's different shape helmets for different shaped heads. So you got to make sure to get the right shape helmet for your head. And really it's only a trial and error, right? There's like an oval shape and there's more round and there's all kinds of sizes, but you really have to try on a few to make sure that you get the right sized helmet. And the second thing you really have to consider when wearing a helmet is you have to really like the helmet because if you don't like the helmet, If it's not comfortable for you, you're not going to wear it. So the best helmet is one, obviously, that you're wearing on the ride. And one of the other things is that you have to be careful of is whether the helmet is actually protective in nature. So helmets come with certain kinds of ratings on them, and most widely used in the United States is something called the DOT rating, right? Department of Transportation. And that's for the entire United States. This is a rating, it's a minimum safety standard required by the United States to sell in the United States. And a lot of them also pass a European standard called the ECE standard. So you also want to look for that. If you have something that passes the ECE standard, usually that standard is a higher safety rating than the DOT. But at a bare minimum, you have to have a DOT rating. And then you're going to get into the shapes of helmets. So, shape of helmet could be a half helmet. They sometimes call it a brain bucket because it doesn't do much.
A face eraser.
Yeah, right. A face eraser,
Do I
right?
really want to wear? I mean, look at me. Do I wear? I don't want to erase this.
Right.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm
So,
just armor, hair
you gotta,
bags on me, whatever. Yeah.
it really depends. It really depends on what you're wearing. So, there's full face helmets, there's modular helmets, but the thing is, whether or not to wear a helmet, well, that's a personal choice. Okay, it may be illegal in some states not to wear a helmet, but it may be okay not to wear a helmet in some states. For instance, like Connecticut doesn't have a helmet law. You don't have to wear a helmet in Connecticut. Florida, another state, you don't have to wear a helmet. Me personally, I think you're crazy if you don't wear a helmet. But that's just me. That's personal choice.
Can insurance reject a claim if you're not wearing a helmet, whether it's legal or not?
Believe it or not, some can. Some can. Some insurance companies actually in the policy say that if you are hurt and you have a head injury or something that could be prevented by wearing a helmet and you weren't wearing a helmet at the time, then we're not going to cover you. So that's a really good point because you have to look in your policy for that language. And if it's not there, okay, great, you're okay. But some of them actually have that language in the policy. They could disclaim coverage if you're not wearing a helmet and the injury would have been prevented had you not worn a helmet. And that's why it's very important to go to somebody before you buy an insurance policy to talk about it with them, because a lot of these places have something you can go online and you pick and choose what your coverage is. Okay, well, that's all well and good, but if you don't understand it, well, you don't know what you're buying. So it's really important to talk to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about as far as insurance company policies go before you go out and buy it. Like I always say, I'm happy to chat with you about that. I'm happy to go over your policy, any aspect of it. I'll explain it to you because me personally, I would much rather see the riding community be safer and protected than not. So, you call me and it's free advice. It's free advice. I love talking about it.
Listeners, you got a rock star over here, Mr. Richard Jaffe, the founding attorney at Riding Counsel. Now, listen, if you've been banged up in a motorcycle accident, he's the guy you want in your corner because he's not just a lawyer. As you're hearing, he's a rider, lives and breathes the biking life. The number, all right, get a pen, get this right. I'll give it to you a couple times, but be prepared. 866-858-0919, free consultation. 24/7. They're ready to listen and help. They got a whole staff. I'm telling you, 30 years of this, right? You got wins to prove it. Talking multi-million-dollar verdicts up in here, guys. Certified brain injury specialist. He knows how to tackle your toughest cases. You get the compensation you need to cover medical bills, recovery, and just getting back to life. But here's what makes him so special. He's one of us. He's out there. He's advocating for safer roads and here, volunteer firefighter, EMT, stepping up for the community. So when you work with Riding Counsel, Richard Jaffe, it's like having a friend that's a legal powerhouse as well, because we're talking the heavy lifting is done for you, investigating the accident, dealing with the insurance companies, fighting for rights, but keeping you in the loop, which is huge because sometimes you kind of get ghosted and nobody knows what's going on, but you're kept in the loop, quick, friendly responses. And look at him. He's gorgeous. Well, while we're at it, by the way, but ridingcounsel.com is all about making you feel supported. So listen, if you're a biker and you've been hurt, do not wait. Okay. Even if you have, by the way, even if you haven't been hurt, here's something I want you to do. Take this number down. Do me a favor. Take this number, this information, text it to the person closest to you. Whoever would, like, God forbid something happens to you, you're going to contact someone, make sure they have this. Keep it on file. If you ever get hurt while riding, once the smoke clears, call immediately. Richard Jaffe, ridingcounsel.com, 866-858-0919. 0919. Again, 866-858-0919. Be ready, be prepared, and be safe on the highway. Look how gorgeous he is. I mean, seriously.
I got a great face for radio.
You got a great face for being a motorcycle attorney.
Or, like if it's easier, just find me, just go on your phone and hit up ridingcounsel.com.
Ridingcounsel.com. And,
Right.
and look
So
at this
that's
gorgeous shirt.
also
Look, Riding Counsel. Look, it's right there. Look at
I
the
got one of
shirt.
these too, man. Check this
They're
out.
gorgeous. Look how
Yeah,
good
buddy.
we're like branded up in here. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's sick. It's just sick. I hope I don't break the camera.
I'm telling you. So if you're either way, if you're in a state that requires a helmet or does not, from more like a legal case perspective, if you are in an accident, you're not wearing a helmet, do you tend to have like a thing where you're automatically at fault or partially at fault if you're not wearing the helmet or even any other gear? How do courts, or even if you're like negotiating before like trying to get a settlement, how's that all factored in? How do people like look at that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so that's somewhat of a complicated question. So let me try to explain.
Well, I'm very complicated.
Yes, yeah, we all are, right? We're very complicated people. So there's two parts to a case, really. There's what's called the liability, and that's who did something wrong in an accident. And then there's the damages, and that's the injuries that you sustain. That's the non-economic portion. And the economic portion is actually things like hospital bills, lost wages, things that could be calculated. So if you're not wearing a helmet and you're in an accident, that has nothing to do with who's at fault for the happening of the accident. Maybe the other person made a left turn, maybe you were speeding, but things like that have nothing to do with wearing a helmet. Wearing a helmet is not part of the contributory negligence, as we say, of an accident happening, but it could be part of the damages portion, because if your injury was caused by the accident, well, that's one thing. But if your injury was caused by the fact that you weren't wearing a helmet, well, that's completely another thing. So it really goes to what the injury is, and could it have been prevented by the fact that you were wearing a helmet, or you should have been wearing a helmet. So, if somebody's at fault in the accident and you fall off your bike, you hurt your leg, wearing a helmet really doesn't seem too relevant. So it's not going to come into play there. But if you were in an accident and you have a head injury and you weren't wearing a helmet, you better be darn sure that that's going to come in the injury portion of your trial, and it's going to reduce your verdict. So really, you got to wear a helmet if you want to be totally protected in court and out.
If someone has a bunch of accidents, like they have a little bit of a history of this, gear or no gear, either way, can that be factored into new cases legally when someone comes to see you? I mean, do they look upon that as well?
Generally, no. What happens in one accident most of the time does not have anything to do with another, unless there really is a pattern. Like if you're in like 10 accidents and it's all for the fact that, okay, well, I didn't see him. I didn't see him at any of these accidents. Okay, well, maybe you have an eye problem that you got to go to the doctor for, right? So, but absent some kind of proof that these accidents are repeating themselves because of the fact that it's a repeating situation, well, that prior accident probably isn't going to come in. At least if you're the plaintiff, if you're suing. If you're the defendant, same kind of deal. Prior accidents really don't have any bearing on what's going on in the current accident, notwithstanding any like special situations that I could see. Like maybe somebody's a diabetic and always forgets to take their medication, and that's why they had an accident or something like that. Okay, well, that's pretty plausible. But barring something like that, the fact that you have a history of accidents before this, probably not going to come into play.
Okay. If someone does pursue this and they're really going like hardcore, we're going to court, we're doing this whole thing. A lot of times you'll see on like TV shows or movies, we have an expert witness who comes in here. Can those be invoked if you wanted to prove that a helmet would have changed the outcome? Is there anything to that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Experts actually play a big role in motorcycle accidents, and they're usually brought in for cases that are sort of they're bigger injuries. Okay. So you do have a brain injury, a traumatic brain injury, a concussion, or maybe a brain bleed. And yeah, sometimes you bring in a doctor who is an expert in maybe neurology or the brain. And sometimes you bring in somebody that's more like a helmet expert that says, look, this is how much the helmet can withstand. This is how much pressure. This is the angle that the accident happened on. So this is what happened to the helmet. It has like a crumple zone, if you will, and this is how it protects the head. But yeah, experts come into play a lot, and they're also very costly, and you really have to educate yourself before you even talk to an expert, and you have to preserve evidence. You can't throw out the helmet that the motorcyclist was wearing. You really got to try to get that. Even the motorcycle and maybe the other car that was involved has a black box. So evidence preservation also plays a big role in how the expert is going to testify. Because on one hand, the expert is testifying because they have a reasonable degree of either engineering certainty or medical certainty, but it's not an exact science. But the more evidence you give to the expert to testify, to base their opinion on, the more sure we could be. So it's really important to preserve evidence and get that expert involved early on in the case. A lot of lawyers don't want to spend money on experts because they're very expensive and they don't want to hire them. But that's not what I do. I actually like to get experts involved earlier than later because I know what's coming. I know what the insurance company is going to argue as soon as I get a case. And in order to thwart that argument, that's why I need the experts early on, right when I get the case. That's when I hire the experts.
You mentioned when you first answered that question about things like brain injuries, but in your resume personally, you're a certified brain injury specialist. Now, how did you get into that? Where does that fit into everything?
Okay, so the Brain Injury Specialty Association actually is something that's national, and New York State actually adopted the brain injury certification program where you learn all about the brain. You learn how it functions, you learn what parts of the brain actually control what parts of your body. You actually learn about traumatic brain injuries and concussions, and there is a difference between the two. And you learn how all these medical conditions actually affect the brain, which in turn affects the body. So when I'm talking to a client, a lot of times right after an accident, they'll go to an emergency room and the doctor will ask them a bunch of questions. Hey, how you doing? What's hurting you? Let's do some x-rays. Let's do some MRIs. Let's do all these kinds of fancy testing. But nobody conducts the right test to see if they have a brain injury, which is a concussion or a mild traumatic brain injury. So there are symptoms that so many doctors miss because not because they want to, but because they're so busy in the emergency rooms, number one. And number two is they're used to these life-threatening situations where somebody has a gunshot wound or their arm or leg hacked off or something like that. So that's what they're looking for. They want to stabilize your life. They don't want to deal with something that's going to be long and pro-lasting. So that's where the certified brain injury specialist certification comes in. I happen to be one. And when I'm talking to a client, I do ask them quite a few questions, and I'm able to recognize whether or not they do have the potential for an injury that nobody really diagnosed. And I also then can suggest to them doctors who actually know what a brain injury is so they can get the help they need. Because when it comes to brain injuries, the faster you get help, the faster you start therapy for your brain, the better chance you have at a full recovery.
Yeah, it's very interesting. This last, I don't know, several years, this last period of time, you're starting to see a lot more attention being paid to brain injury and concussion, especially in like the sports arenas. They're paying more attention to that. And so it seems like it's come a very long way. And it's weird because it presents differently in everyone. It looks differently and has all these it's like such a wide spectrum of what it could be and how it functions. So it's a big deal, like bigger than you probably realized. Is brain injury or something on that line, is that like the most common injury you see in people, or is there other more common injuries when people come to you?
I would say something like road rash is more common than brain injury when it comes to motorcycle accidents, but brain injury has to probably run a close second. People come in and they have scarring on their arms, on their legs, and some of it's absolutely terrible and horrible, and it takes so long to heal. And that stuff that you really don't want to deal with it. So it happens because people wear short sleeve t-shirts, and that's gonna not give you any kind of protection when you're sliding down the road at 70 miles an hour. But
On 110-degree asphalt.
yeah, I mean, the rocks get embedded in you, and your arm, you have the degloving injuries of your arm or your leg, and they have to graft skin, and it's painful. It's very painful. It's a long process of recovery, and it's really costly. So I would say that's the number one injury, but a close second really is a traumatic brain injury from things like the concussion, the blow to the head, the blow to the helmet, which in turn gives an impact to the head. And then you have to deal with the psychological effects of being in an accident like that. So there's a lot going on. And a lot of times the motorcyclist doesn't really, they don't get it. They don't see their own injury, which is something that I try to help them with. And I try to help them get to a doctor that will actually help diagnose them the right way and get them to the therapies that help them.
Because even concussions take a little while to show up sometimes. It's not immediately evident.
100%. 100%. It depends where in the brain is affected, because sometimes you have cognitive issues. That could be something like inability to find words, which is like a pause between words. Like you want to say, hey, give me the screwdriver, but instead it comes out and they say, hey, can you get me that screwdriver? Like they can't really recall it. That's what we call cognitive. There's other symptoms of cognitive function as well. Sometimes it's vestibular, they lose their balance. Sometimes it's executive thinking, where they can't make a decision, or they forget the order of things. Like, they'll put the laundry in the washing machine, but they can't figure out whether to add detergent first or softener first, something like that. So there's all kinds of memory problems, but this does take a little bit to manifest. It's not just, hey, I have a headache, so therefore I must have a brain injury.
Viewers and listeners out there, please wear a helmet. Please take care of yourself. Please be safe out there. Because listen, if you're a biker, you've been through the ringer in one of these accidents, I want to tell you, listen, ridingcounsel.com. They got your back. Not just any lawyer. We're talking real riders here, okay? You don't charge a dime unless you win something, okay? No fee unless you get compensated. It's all on the website. You can go check it out, ridingcounsel.com. So you sit down with you, answer your questions, break down legal options. You can hear for yourself. These answers are all simple and make sense. So as riders themselves, they know the road, they know the risks. This isn't just somebody that hung a shingle and says, yeah, I know motorcycle. No, he knows what he's doing over here. So medical bills, lost wages, you need to get covered. Okay. They don't talk the talk. They've actually done it. Millions in settlements, guys. We're not playing around here. Riding Counsel has a passion for the biking community. Everything they do, not just about winning cases, but being there for you, fighting for you, and just supporting you every step of the way. So first off, ridingcounsel.com. Go check it out. The phone number, 866-858-0919, free consultation. Just give them a call, see what they have to say, and I guarantee you're going to be much better off than when you started. So swing by the website, ridingcounsel.com, and these are the guys you want in your corner when things take a wrong turn. No pun intended there. So give him a call, check it out. He's look how friendly he is. He's awesome. Give him a call.
I do love talking motorcycles. I will help anybody out there with anything they have. So, you just give me a call, ask for me, Rich Jaffe, and hit me up on the website. You can text me, email me, however you want to do it. I'm available 24/7, and I'm happy to talk to you. So I appreciate everybody's time out there listening. Million, I appreciate your time. Sitting here and hanging out, chopping it up with me about motorcycles. And I really hope everybody out there stays wild and in a safe way and in a legal way. So
and don't forget, make sure like, subscribe, follow, bell notification, leave a comment down below. All helps us out and keeps this thing going for us. And we're going to do a lot more of these and just keep bringing you good information like we did today.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate everybody joining me, and we'll have another episode made soon. And until then, everybody, rubber side up. No, rubber side down.
Shiny side
up.
Keep the shiny side up. That's the way.
All right, bye.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Riding Counsel with Richard Jaffe. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your fellow riders. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and ride safe.